you.
There we go. I found it. No, it's basically what happened is because I put on the PowerPoint, they've kind of removed all the like the functional buttons that you need. Okay, so where have you gone? Right, from current slide. Let's try again. Here we go. Can you see everything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So both happy with what the personal tutoring role. So that is going to be the person independent from your teaching, although they could be the same person, but the role is independent and you're there to support your learners through their studies. But in most cases, you'll be both the personal tutor and the trainer at the same time. But again, if you're looking at teaching learners across, I don't know, the spectrum of different qualifications, colleges, universities, schools, you're going to have a personal tutor as part of the process. Right, so we've explained what a personal tutor is. So again, the personal tutor is someone who helps the learners to complete their academic studies regardless of the course that they are studying. So there is a report from the Sutton Trust who take for 11 to 16-year-olds, those who had tutoring were more than likely going to succeed in their studies. So I think in London, obviously, with it being a bit more a wealthy area in certain aspects anyway, they've all realised that those with higher income backgrounds have great success when it comes in their academic studies, and what that does is it widens that sort of difference between those from disadvantaged backgrounds and those from wealthier areas. And if you think about it, if you've got access to tutoring at home because your family's got a bit of money, then that's automatically going to help achieve more in your studies because you have that additional support than what I suppose a typical student doesn't have. I didn't have any sort of tutors growing up outside of school. Did either of you?
No.
No, and if you go to those sort of areas, I can remember one school in particular, a private school. They've got the extra tutors in school, but also they've got assigned tutors as well outside of school to help them in areas which they generally struggle with. But I don't know if you noticed, but there seems to be a bigger need for tutors now these days as well outside of school. Any reasons why?
Is there a need, or is it people seem to have more money now and can afford them from a middle class level and not just well, we're going to say upper class, aren't we?
Yeah, potentially. But yeah, in London, the figure of using these additional tutors is actually 42%, which, you know, is considerably high in comparison. In fairness, I don't remember ever growing up any of my friends, at least anyway, having that extra support outside of school. Obviously, that will massively influence someone's academic level within education as well. So the personal tutor and the teaching roles are different roles in this context, but there are times where these roles will overlap, and obviously me being your teacher as well. So again, that's sort of the boundaries there. Obviously they're different roles, but they all come into the same sort of a job description for me. But true or false?
I would think true. Well, no, yeah, I would think true.
Steve, what about you?
I would disagree with that.
In what way?
Because it doesn't necessarily mean that. Because again, I think with that one is you can get people who end up failing, and you can have good tutors, but people fail because sometimes it's the person that's a tutor doesn't necessarily have ability to influence other things. There can be other people that stop them from doing things to do. So if you look back what I went through at uni, my personal tutor was quite good, but he didn't do a lot of stuff he could do or should have done. And yet there were people who were better personal tutors who are outside students like myself who are dyslexic, and none of them passed. But it was stuff that was beyond their control that they couldn't do. which didn't stop us from failing because they weren't able to do what they needed to do. So I don't think it's the quality of it. It's sometimes it can be the awarding body or people above them who withhold where they should be.
Yeah, potentially. In my sort of opinion is, you've got your awarding body who set the criteria, you've got your teacher who delivers the session, but the benefits of a good quality tutor can help you to overcome potential barriers. So it can be the difference between, well, actually, what does a tutor actually do?
Helps you understand what's required of you, I think, and it breaks it down step by step to help you achieve smaller goals rather than a bigger goal.
Absolutely. What else?
Helps you to.
Let you finish, Aaron. I was going to say help with stuff outside of the study as well.
In what way?
So if you're having problems and challenges outside, so if we link back to some of the modules we've done earlier on, and we've talked about where people have had issues in their personal lives going on, things like housing issues. If you've got students who come over from abroad who've got issues with things like visas, things like that, it might be helping them with guidance and where to get the information for that, support around personal issues going on, family crisis, that sort of thing. Trying to help them and put things in place to overcome those challenges that can end up derailing the study of a student.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good, in my sort of personal opinion is, I agree with the statement, which, a good quality tutor can take someone from may not be able to complete that qualification, be able to be that extra support to help you get that little bit further to get you over that sort of past sort of barrier. Whereas again, why do people withdraw from studying?
Lack of knowledge, frustration, not seeing it, not understanding.
Yeah, lack of praise, maybe, lack of motivation, lack of support.
Yeah.
Personal lives.
Loss of interest, health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, think about it, both of your roles, and Steve in particular, when you're teaching, how much support, so I'm obviously aware of, you don't have, you're just told, right, go to this place, teach this class, and that's it. How much support can you give each individual learner?
Not always a huge lot because you don't know anything about them before you turn up. Obviously, if you know a bit about the learners, you can help with bits and pieces. If they say they've got problems with things like reading question papers, stuff like that, I can help with things like that. But others are more difficult. I had a difficult course Friday of last week. I was doing a first aid course and I got sent to Bristol to a care home, and I had 3 learners who could barely speak English. One probably spoke 5 words, one spoke about 20 words, one probably spent about 100, 150 words. And I had one that turned up late who wouldn't get on the floor. So it was a bit of a nightmare course to go and deliver.
I can imagine. Now, if you were to, let's say there's another Steve, Steve who's, behind the scenes, Steve's there to support your learners in that situation, what could you do to help them?
I think from that point of view would be know the information in advance, arrange translating documents, things like that for the individuals that have gone through. Decided whether one who couldn't get up and down the floor, whether it's worthwhile them being there. It's probably because they were close retirement age as well, so they didn't really want to be there either. And just made sure the right support was there to help. So translation bits and pieces. It didn't help when I walked in the home. They said that you might not have anybody either. It was a completely poorly run place when I was there.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Aaron? So I know sometimes you are lumped with a massive class yourself. You get like 20 on your personal licensing, don't you?
Yeah. I had a busy one this week actually, and strangely enough, I'm just doing the module about behaviours, and I experienced a lot of it. We had 3 people on from 3 different pubs in Darlington, 3 very rough pubs, and they complimented their customers. They were just like the customers. So had 17 on a personal license course, some really good professional guys, and then they really brought the ethos down. And then also as well last week, I ran an online security guard and top-up course, which we had 12 on, all professional people. all chatting away. As soon as the course started, silence. So I broke them one by, I separated them one by one and had a chat with them and say, listen, guys, this is recorded. The SIA and Highfields do look at these recordings. I've got to have interaction. Rather than doing it as a whole group, I thought doing it as a one-to-one would work better, and it did. But yeah, definitely, like you said there, Steve, sometimes with the first aid, because we're not allowed to put the Annies on the table as well. And people just go, I've got bad knees. Yeah, I bought some of those gardening pads the other week. You know, ones that you kneel on for that reason. Yeah, so I can go cha-ching.
Yeah, in fairness, when I do first aid, my knees are quite sensitive, so I have to use. And the last time I did a first aid course, I was the only one who actually requested, "Can I have some knee pads?" Because it's a lot more comfortable. When I work in the fire service, I've got padded, trousers, so it doesn't matter. I can crawl through tunnels. It makes no difference. Difference between going to soft play with my kids and crawling through tunnels are absolutely agony for me. Yeah, the right gear with the right PPE, don't notice it at all. So actually, just being aware as a tutor, you can actually potentially say, right, we need these, reasonable adjustments in place for this learner to help them overcome that course. And I think that's the difference between a good tutor and a poor one. Now, what I've had quite recently, actually, obviously advertising new courses, I've had quite a few people saying, "Oh, can you give me a discount on this? I can't afford that." It's like, I could, but I would rather have, and this is sort of the ethos of what I do, is I have a smaller number of learners, means I can give you that one-to-one support when you need it.
Yeah.
Now, if you spread yourself too thinly, then I can't perform my role as a tutor. I couldn't say, right, just turn up during the course. I'll be your teacher only, and that's all you get as part of the service. It's that, if there are personal problems, if there are any sort of things that you need help with, you have that time set aside to do so. And sadly, I've just basically just withdrawn a learner, one of my diploma, well, actually on the new diploma course. Basically, this learner has booked his tutorial. Didn't show up for his tutorial, so he's blocked out one of my free sessions for, let's say, for one of you to attend if you needed that extra support. Contacted him, and he's halfway around the country on holiday, and he has the cheek to send me. I called him out like 5 minutes later. Actually, I texted him and I said, "You've booked a meeting with me at this time. Are you coming on?" This person sent me a picture of him on holiday enjoying himself. It's like, you don't have that courtesy to contact me. But what that does is, because I've moved everything to the evenings, obviously to work around childcare, is I had to get my children back, my daughter down for a nap by that particular time for that meeting, which I would do because we booked the meeting. Then for that person to turn around and say, "Yeah, I don't respect your time, so I'm just going to do my own thing."
Fancy sending the picture. Wow.
Yeah, and he sent me loads of pictures of him enjoying himself. It's like, I don't want to be part with that. I don't really want that learner on board, because basically what that's doing is limiting the time that you have as part of your studies. If I can't give you that support because someone else is abusing that time, then that's not good. So I decided, anyone attends or doesn't attend a meeting, or if they don't give me enough cancellation notice, I'll be charging them for my time to do so, because I can get another tutor in to help with that sort of stuff. Again, it's just abusing the system, and we should, in fairness, as tutors, we should be aware of it and actually educate our learners as well what is required of their sort of professional conduct as well, being learners as well. What do you expect within the classroom, the ground rules? That's where we are. So this unit is Unit 8. The first learning outcome is understanding the roles and responsibilities in relation to tutoring, the factors that affect learners' approaches to learning, the use of personal tutoring in a specific context, that's up to you to decide, and how to create personal learning targets, which I can imagine you may not do actually in your current roles due to external influences. So before we go into that one, can you write down as many different responsibilities of a personal tutoring role? And don't put down, it might be teaching might be part of that, because I like to keep that separate as a different role. So as a tutor, personal tutor, what are your roles and responsibilities? So you covered a few already. Right, have you come up with a few?
Yeah.
So what have you come up with?
The key thing I would say your role would be is very much like a signpost for an individual is probably the best way to describe what the role would
Yeah,
be.
absolutely.
To have a bit of an idea about different things. But I think from a responsibility is to know your own limitations in terms of what you can and can't do, so that you can point people to the right direction so you don't overstep and try and advise on things that you're not an expert with or don't really know much about. It would be a key thing. I would look from that point of view. It's knowing and being aware of what things you can put in place for an individual as well from that point of view, and obviously making sure that you make yourself available, but you're not doing everything for the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, you've hit quite a few areas that we're actually going to be touching on today as well, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, anything else you want to add to that list?
So I've got be patient.
Okay, yeah.
Be knowledgeable in your subject matter.
Yeah.
Be approachable, adaptable, and flexible. Be understanding. Have passion and innovation with resources. Be holistic in the approach to advice. Be a good communicator and be professional.
Yeah. Good. Good. So question 1 is about which skills and qualities are required for the tutors. So as Aaron's picked up quite a few there. Good tutor is patient, knowledgeable, adaptable. Why energetic?
To keep the pace of the classroom alive.
But remember, we're not a teacher, we are a tutor.
I think it more from that point of view is if you've not got energy to keep going, sometimes you need to be enthusiastic too. If you've got a learner that's struggling, motivation's gone, can you pick up that motivation back in the individual? So if you can come across quite energetic, and enthusiastic about the area, the things that they're doing, the things they've done really well, could you take from a student who is demotivated, struggling, and use some of that energy and show them some more energy that might pick them up and put them back on the track with their learning?
Yeah, definitely. I'm quite, you probably noticed, I'm quite laid back when it comes to my teaching, and that could be quite problematic, I suppose, in that sort of role, because actually it seems like I don't have that energy, whereas when you have those difficult conversations, you need to show that energy to support them and get them up to where you want to encourage them to complete. And that can be the difference between that learning passing and failing. But at the same time, you have to recognize your own, and we talk about self-reflection, recognize your own skills and qualities and look to where we can improve. So one of my strengths, I suppose, is that I'm able to just switch from being laid back to being professional, to being a lad, having those ability to kind of like fit in the right environments as well. But yes, very important that you as tutors or as teachers as well, that you recognize your own qualities, your own strengths, your own weaknesses. Knowledgeable, for example, as Aaron said, absolutely, I can't give everyone the right support, the right guidance to people. But if you've got, let's say, for example, we talk about university and one of our learners has got a problem in one of their lessons, I may be giving the wrong information in comparison to what the teacher will, because they've got better knowledge in that situation as well. Okay, but we can look at the underlying issues that learner might have. So knowledge is really important. I've had a learner who's doing one of my courses who is adamant they're going to get a job for the the CQC, Ofsted, and all that sort of stuff. And they've got, I don't know, about 50 different qualifications they're going to teach their new role, which, to be honest, I don't believe at all. But I can't give advice on every single qualification because I don't know the industry well enough. I can only advise what I know, but I know where to refer people for that support to give them that right information as well. And it's all about identifying your weaknesses, identifying your knowledge gaps, and either one, create a training plan to identify and address those gaps, or find someone who can actually deal with that themselves, or potentially three is create those networks with people who can provide that support. So it's all going to depend on what time you have available as well, and the resources that are available for you to carry out that role. What does open mean?
Honest.
Yeah.
Approachable.
I think it's open to criticism as well from people you're tutoring as well. So let's say, for example, if we felt there was something that you weren't doing, you weren't giving us, would you be open enough to us to say, we feel we needed X, Y, or Z from you? And then you'd be open enough to take that rather than take it as a criticism and become defensive, to actually review, like we've talked about when we've done things like the reflective practice, actually, maybe this is what I need to do to make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think potentially you can look at being open as being available to your learners to actually, help them deal with their issues within their time as well. Because sometimes, and there's no right or wrong with this, is when I used to teach at college, it was once half four come up, I was gone home. You can't reach me outside of work because I kept everything private. But whereas now, and it kind of goes against the social media policies, I suppose, from colleges and all, but because of I've got to say different, that you have those open channels where you can communicate out of hours that suit you. So I think, Aaron, for example, we were exchanging emails at 6 o'clock in the morning the other day, going through stuff. And actually, it works for both people, then why not? You don't have to be within the confines of 9 till 4:30. It depends on your business. It depends on what support that you're given and the boundaries that you create as well. As you can imagine, good tutors are mature, passionate, flexible, so being able to adapt. What about emotional intelligent? What does that mean?
Maybe recognizing when somebody's had enough for the day and slogging them any further is not going to be beneficial for the learning of that person. Being open to some days they may need help in a different way, more emotional support than others. Being aware that some courses or some situations that we discuss or talk about might have a negative impact on the person's immediate kind of acute emotional intelligence and health and things like that.
Yeah,
I think also linking to that as well is probably also being aware when we're having difficulties in our own personal lives.
Yeah,
we don't take that sort of thing out as well on our learners as well when we've got them. And that's the other little bit I'd add to what Aaron put to that.
Yeah, so within our sort of program, you've got like 12 months, I suppose, is sort of the general aim for every single person. But life happens, doesn't it? You go through spells where work is just completely manic. Obviously, you've been counted this several times. Work is manic. Then you've got personal lives, you've got children, all that sort of stuff as well. And sometimes it's and I had a learn actually 2 weeks ago, which I said, you need a break from this. You start a new job, you're rushing through this, you're not giving this the time you need because you have other things going on in your life, and it's being able to recognize that and then give your learner that support to help them deal with it. Again, you can't always, as much as you like to say, and I always say, do a little bit a day, but sometimes you can, because everyone is different. Everyone's got their own priorities and different things going on. So you just have to be aware of these things as well and come up with different ideas to help to overcome them as well. Another learner who actually said to me, is it possible I can delay my studies because my health isn't quite right? It's like, absolutely. There's no sort of, if I say no, that person is going to withdraw from that course pretty much straight away. And it's going to completely ruin that relationship we have with them as well. So it's being intelligent to understand what are the benefits, what are the limitations of the way that you deal with your learners as well. And as you'll work in security, you'll know the benefits of being an effective communicator. You know, it's integral to our roles and pretty much everything: teaching, security, tutoring, coaching, mentoring, the whole lot. So question 1 is you need to list 5 skills and qualities required for personal tutoring, then analyze those 5 skills and qualities and explain why they're required. So one thing to obviously help to strengthen your answers is analyze your own skills against those, you know, those qualities as well. Hi, Paul, how you doing?
Hello, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So this is Unit 8, so it's about the role of a personal tutor.
Okay.
And you have to remove yourself, I suppose, and all of us will sort of overlap into both roles, but you kind of have to remove yourself from the role of a teacher in this unit.
Yep.
So when you're going through college, university, school, you always have like a tutor on the side who will help you through your studies. And this is kind of what the unit is looking at.
Okay.
So what are those 5 skills and qualities? What are they? Why are they required? What are benefits and limitations of having them? And how do you stack up against them? So if you want to just pick maybe one each, Aaron, we'll start with you.
Oh, God. Right, so knowledgeable in subject is knowing not just your own subject matter, but also anything that might be relatable to the learner's inquisitism around that sector and its relatable knowledge factors. Being able to make it modern and in line with even geographical locations that the learner might be aware of locally. Having that adaptable nature where, you know, you will go home and you'll take things from the local news and you'll read things and kind of add to it. Not being afraid to go back to something to kind of say, oh, after the lesson or after I was with you, I went home and I thought about this, you know, not just ending it there, adding that knowledge later on if you can. I think the benefits of that ideally is for the person that you're tutoring. It's going to make them relate to you more. You know, you're not just a tutor, you're a human being who's actually listening to their conducive needs. You're taking into account their wants and requirements, not just on the course, but them on a personal level. You're giving them interesting things to discuss later on, even outside of the classroom with their friends or family, making it interesting with your knowledge. The limitations of that could be some courses that you teach don't really have that outreach where being knowledgeable in other subjects has a difference. Say for things like maths, you know, it's very set on with what it is. Making it relatable to me is, I'm fortunate that I've got a lot of qualifications. I've had a lot of jobs, so I'm able to bring around not just my knowledge, but how my knowledge relates into the real world and make it a more realistic experience, especially on a one-to-one when I can really get to know that person's personality.
Yeah, so that's a a massive quality, I suppose, of any teacher, having that life experience. Because what normally happens, and this is sort of how I got into teaching initially, was you go through your degrees, you end up doing your PGCE, and then you just stay at the college and start working it, and with no sort of real life experience, I suppose, in some manner, because actually you need that to actually adapt your sessions for the real world. And we talk about, yeah, it's all good. And we had this conversation about first aid the other day, which there's no sort of right or wrong answer here. Is, yeah, you'd expect your first aid trainers to be knowledgeable and have good experience, but it depends on, what you're teaching. So do you need to be, a paramedic to be teaching first aid in schools?
No,
I don't think you do, but, I see the benefits of it if anyone asks a question, because actually you can give a better example. Sometimes you might be teaching too high a level, but again, there's nothing wrong with you saying, right, this is a bit beyond my expertise, we're not teaching that. There's nothing to say, right, I'm just going to refer you to the person, who can give you that additional support needs as well. So it all depends on what you're teaching, I suppose. There are benefits and limitations to both. I would, It depends on what level you're teaching. Depends on what sort of knowledge you need as well. So the reality of it, if I was teaching them, obviously what Paul does, which is quite good, for first aid trainers, they need a minimum of FREC, and I absolutely agree with that. Because you're only teaching first aid at work. But if you're, I suppose it's better if you are at a level where you're a paramedic and you doubt these sort of incidents, then it's going to give you that more knowledge. But you're not teaching that extra knowledge. You are teaching the course content. So again, it's you being aware of your boundaries within that role as well. Morning, Stephanie.
Morning, you're right.
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Lovely. Right, Steve. What about you? What sort of what example can you give me?
I think looking at in terms of knowing where to signpost something, I think that's a key one and an important skill. So knowing your own limitations in terms of where your knowledge, skills, and expertise are, but having knowing enough to know where you might know organisations you can signpost people to, where to look for information that might be available to help somebody if they've got the struggles and challenges that are going on. But also being able to make yourself ready to take the time to listen, to really find out what's going on, to be able to point me to the right person rather than jumping to the wrong conclusion and sending them to the wrong person, then losing that trust from the individual that you've got.
Yeah, can you give me an example of where you've had to signpost one of your learners?
I wouldn't say, because obviously it doesn't quite fit in terms of where the work that I deliver. So it's very, very difficult from that point of view to point people where to go with that. So I couldn't say that I've had to do that.
Yeah, so
I've got
an example I would use, which comes up a lot in the diploma, is QTLS. Now, I know the requirements of QTLS, and I can give you strong indicators of what you need to apply. But at the same time as QTLS make their own decisions based on their own criteria at the time. So they keep changing the goalposts for that. And again, it all depends on your own individual timetable, what qualifications you need to go with that. There are sort of ways around the system for you to get it, but only QTLS can make that requirement. So it's no good me recommending, this person deals with that, or this person does, or I can help, but actually, you need to refer them to the right people who would be set in that situation. Potentially with security, you might refer them to the SIA, especially when it comes to badges. You can only give them the right information, but at the same time is their own personal history, and it all comes down to the SIA, how they interpret maybe the criminal history aspect of each licensed applicant as well, which we can't really give them the full support on that. What about you, Paul? Can you give me any examples of skills and qualities for a tutor?
Yeah, good effective communicator, somebody that can talk to people and get the message across, deliver the subject and pass on that knowledge. Yes,
absolutely. Why is that important?
Well, because if you can't communicate, you can't pass on the knowledge, the learner's not gonna grow.
Yes, absolutely. So when I deliver train-the-trainer programs, it's because corporations generally bring in the person who is, technical, the expert in particular subjects, but they don't actually know how to communicate effectively, which it's all good to have that information in your head, but if you can't give that out for someone else to break down and actually what's the word I'm looking for? To be able to interpret the requirements, then actually that information is no good. Stephanie, you've joined a bit late. Can you give me an example of a key skill and quality for a personal tutor?
Patience.
Yeah, absolutely. Why?
Because obviously you're going to come across, a broad range of learners, all with different limitations and abilities. So you've got to demonstrate as a tutor your patience to be able to support them all correctly. You can't just expect them all to go at the same pace. Yeah. Obviously, if you don't manage expectations, that you have got that flexibility, then your learners, they might not engage or they might not feel comfortable, and then you're not promoting a positive environment for your learners to develop and progress.
No, absolutely. Everyone goes at different paces, don't they? Even all of you here are at different sort of pace. I'm not going to say who's ahead between you and Aaron, but there's slight differences where you are. Steve and Paul, you're at your own sort of journey, and that's okay. And it's recognizing that people will go at different paces. And again, can we by knowing this, can we potentially accommodate these changes and adapt our targets at the same time as well? So is everyone happy with skills and qualities required for a tutoring role?
Yeah.
Yeah, thumbs up. Perfect. So you've all given me a really good example there as well. So to help you to develop your answers a bit more stronger is analyze your own skills against what you've stated as well. So do you do that well, or is there areas that you could improve as well? What about values, behaviors, and attitudes? What are they? I want you to write down what an attitude is, what a value is, and what a belief is. And maybe give me an example as well. And I'm also going to throw behaviors at you too. Right, anyone want to start and give me a suggestion?
Yes. An attitude is an approach to something.
Okay.
How we approach something.
And how do you mean by approach?
So my attitude is how I approach a subject, a person, a situation, and the way I act within that situation portrays an attitude.
Okay. What about values? What are values? Anyone?
So
values are they're kind of something that you have the core of what you do. So what you believe in, what you're going to deliver, what you're going to. I'm trying to think the best way to describe it is something. It's something that's deep rooted within your organisation or you as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's in your core, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So I put there a value is a moral, a core spiritual feeling about something.
Okay. What about beliefs?
A belief is a structure of a thought process.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go with that. And one thing, in fairness, this should be behaviours rather than beliefs. So what is behaviour?
It's how you act. It's what you do. It's how you behave towards someone. So if you look at something like when we're teaching security, the attitude and behaviour cycle, your attitude could be deep rooted, where your behaviour is how you act and how you respond to that. So you can always change your behaviour, but you can't necessarily always change your attitude.
Yeah, it's easier to change your behaviour than your attitude, isn't it? No, absolutely. So here are. Go on, Aaron.
I'd put a behaviour is the way we conduct ourselves to get a prescribed result from an individual person or group.
Okay, yeah. So here are some sample definitions, and to be honest, I can't remember where I got these definitions from. But values are the principles or standards of behaviour based on judgment of what's important in life. Behaviours are the way we act, conduct ourselves, particularly towards others. And attitudes are a settled way of thinking or feeling about something. So how do these impact your own subjects?
Well, the way we deliver them.
I think, yeah, well, I'm saying how you deliver them. So your values are, I'm going to deliver good quality training. I'm going to put the learner at the forefront of what I do. Behaviour is how you do it, and attitude is kind of how you approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives that. And what are the benefits to your learners then by having high, ethical principles, values, behaviours, and attitudes? How is that going to benefit your learners?
Become quite inclusive in terms of the way to deliver. So the more we put those, the more learners should in theory feel comfortable with what we're learning, feel included, they're not excluded. and that we want them to be there with us when we're learning, when we're teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do we know about, obviously, we're all role models in our roles, and is that important?
Yeah. Obviously, you want to set a good example. If we were a negative role model on our learners wouldn't engage. They wouldn't want to learn with us. They'd leave partway through courses. They wouldn't go on and achieve what they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll agree with that one. So how do your attitudes, values, and beliefs affect your tutoring? So as we talk about your personal life, that can affect your tutoring. How we are feeling in the morning can affect the way we deal with our learners. So let's say, for example, Aaron, you were out on the doors last night, you had a really bad night. You come into work in the morning, and how does that affect you? And
I'm tired.
Yeah.
Tired, short, snappy. I was at work late last night, but actually had a very nice night. There was no fights or anything. It was quite refreshing.
Fantastic. Stephanie, what about yourself?
I'm not sure. I think it's the same thing. I think it might be, like you said, if you've got personal problems, or maybe you don't get on with your team very well, or there might be a problem with management, or I think it's all just about making sure that you've got that professional practice, so that if you do have any issues, I've always kind of lived by it, that you leave it at the door, so your learners don't have a clue of anything, any conflict that you have. You just ensure that you're creating that positive environment for your learners, so you shouldn't allow anything of yours to reflect or impact your learners.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, think about, Stephanie, you've got kids, I've got kids as well. Sometimes, especially my young kids, is I can have a day when it's a really bad day. They're both not behaving. They're very, very testing, which obviously does affect the way that you kind of deal with the rest of your day. In a way, you have to leave that at the door when it comes to dealing with your learners, because the reality of it is they don't care about your own personal problems. They want to know about how you're going to help them with their studies, and that's sort of the goal, I suppose, of them. What about from our past experiences? Especially we stereotype. Who stereotypes?
Everybody.
Yeah, pretty much everybody does it. How we act on it is different. The difference between being professional or not, but you look in the eyes of security and potentially, probably to some extent, health and social care. You sort of learn from your past experiences in the industry and how you may interact with a certain person. But the reality of it is, by doing that, you are protecting yourself from harm and from danger. But we also have to realize that each learner is different, and they're not always going to be the same as what our personal beliefs were. So we have to be able to be open-minded to adapt to that situation as well, and not to discriminate individuals based on the way that we think around us as well. So this sort of takes us on to the next bit, and I'm expecting probably all of you to be able to draw the Batari box.
Oh.
Steve, do you teach this in your conflict management courses?
I do, yeah. I do.
Yeah.
And then what I often do is, when I'm talking about different topics with some people from time to time, I draw that back out as well with individuals when I'm teaching other bits and pieces, not just from different conflict bits and pieces as well.
Yeah.
Try and talk to people about in terms of what goes on. It quite often comes out in a lot of stuff in care that I go through and I deal with as well. And also sometimes draw on it when I teach things like medication as well. So if you're going in with clients and the way you behave, that can have that knock-on effect. You actually, when you go in, have like where they want to take the medication, whether they will or they won't want to take it, that comes in. Also for things like moving and handling as well, the Batari box goes in for me as well. It's what we tend to find from post-COVID is during COVID, a lot of staff were going in, racing in, trying to get people out, having difficulties with moving and handling people, but actually not going in, actually giving enough time, and the way they were behaving and treating residents found it's hard to get people when they went in with a different attitude, a bit more time, a bit more focus on what they're doing. They found they didn't need to do as much work when it came to moving and handling. So I've actually started linking that a lot more into other topic areas rather than just conflict management work.
Yeah, absolutely. It does fit into your sort of, not necessarily just security. It does fit into communication styles. You know, getting on with people. Stephanie, do you use the term Batari box within your industry, or?
I wouldn't really say I use it delivery wise, but it's something that obviously I'm aware of, just of the impact of my attitude, my behaviour around my learners. So it's not something that I would deliver, but maybe when we're doing like an introduction, I suppose I'll touch on it. You know, when we manage expectations of, you know, what I expect from my learners and what they expect from me, and then in turn what consequences there might be if, you know, there's disruptive behaviour or negative behaviours.
No, absolutely. And I sort of find that experienced teachers kind of do this automatically. Whereas, especially those who've just completed the AET, still don't quite understand the effects that their own behaviours, their own attitudes have upon their professional lives. And I suppose one thing that, in this regards for me, is actually from a personal life. Sometimes when I'm dealing with my wife, I don't actually kind of consider the Batari box as much as I should, because there's always this sort of vicious cycle in my relationship where I can kind of sense the mood not being right, and instead of being positive, and I don't change my attitude quickly enough, I don't think. Whereas in a work capacities, I've always got that positive attitude. I'm kind of, you know, it's now sort of rooted inside me. But from a personal perspective, it's not as much, because I suppose there's more emotions that are involved when it comes to family as well. So again, it's just being mindful of how that can affect your, especially your attitude, how that affects your own values, I suppose, and being open to other people's opinions as well. So question 2 is explain how your own values can impact the role of a personal tutor. You think about the way that we are as role models, especially as role models, because again, learners going to see this is how we behave, so this is how they should behave. When we talk about the ground rules that we set within our classes as well, is that will massive. We have to be able to show that we're going to follow these, rather than we're just telling them the way they should be done. So how can your behaviors impact the role of a tutor, and also how can your attitude impact that role of a tutor as well? Yeah, so it's how does that impact your learners?
Well, you set the precedent to your learners, so then obviously if you've got a bad attitude or your behaviour is a bit rubbish, you set that precedent, therefore the learners will just follow it. So unless you set that, manage expectations and set standards that you expect, then, you know, they might just have free reign, which again is a negative impact on those who actually, you know, might want to learn or might have an interest. If they're following, you know, bad or negative behaviour, then it's just going to disrupt everything.
Steph, remember the guy who took over your health and safety cohort? I won't say his name, because obviously it's recorded, but he is the biggest prime example of how a negative bad attitude can affect a cohort of people. Absolutely. The best example.
Yeah, they were smashing it with me, and then this guy took over, and it just failed a lot of standards. There was negative behaviour and really detrimentally impacted the learners, to the point where at the end of the course they had their certificates recalled, because it was just really bad practice all the way through, wasn't it?
Sat at the table on the front, smoking a vape while teaching. With honestly, at the front of the classroom, with he's like 1 foot on the table, 1 foot on a chair, vaping at the same time.
Dreadful.
Just what you want as well. Now think about it this way, because you know, Steve, Aaron, and Paul, you work in security. Is security a good career to get in?
It depends what you want out of life, doesn't it? It absolutely can be. It's a steady career with lots of job roles.
Yeah.
If you progress and you get up to roles like heads of security and you work in areas like London, you can earn some very good money.
Yeah, absolutely. But what are those who are not interested in that sort of or don't potentially have that ability to work in those roles.
Night shift and Netflix.
Night shift, Netflix, yeah.
Depends what you value, doesn't it? Depends like what we went through before. Like what is it that you value? Is it, you know, money, or is it things, or is it education? It goes back to what you deem as important and what you would value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now you think about going up the chain, I suppose there's not many opportunities, I suppose, progressing within security, because it can be quite competitive, especially when there's 10 really good able individuals going for that same role. And especially within organizations, there can be limited roles. So for example, you see a lot in security, you've got, let's say, a company based down in where I am in Sussex. If they were, let's say they want a contract up in Middlesbrough, what progression opportunities are there for staff in Middlesbrough?
Throughout the area. I mean, potentially regional supervisor, but even that's only going to be an extra 30 pence an hour nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah. So potentially, is it, in my opinion, security is, unless you are from, Paul, your background, where you have extensive police experience, again, potentially it's not really a good career route to go down. But if you've got people in your courses, let's say you've got new people to the industry working on, door course, if I'm saying, I'll be honest with you, security is not a good career route for you, is that a good thing? As a tutor?
No.
Absolutely not. Whether or not you believe that sort of thing is a different story, but you have to be able to help your learners to realize their dreams and their aspirations without negatively impacting the course that they're doing as well. Because again, if you say, you're wasting your time on this course, then your learners are going to drop out left, right, and centre because they don't see the value in it, because you're not imparting that knowledge and that making it a good.
I think it all depends as well. What part of the country you're in, and two, sort of what sort of company you're working for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you look at my last role that I actually got made redundant because they got rid of the position. But my last role as head of security was 60,000 a year. Our patrol officers were getting 30,000 a year, and our CCTV operators were getting 34. And that's in London, and that was the average rates for that security company in London itself. But if you go out to somewhere like, I don't know, Newcastle, I'm just having a guess here, I've never worked there, but you're probably not going to have the same opportunities or the same sort of wage or money.
Absolutely. And then what comes from your industry is your passion. Actually, you've worked in the roles, you understand the benefits, and actually how, for a career perspective, we all know the potential within the security industry. We have to ensure our values and the way that we act actually reflect that as well. Because there's no point having mixed messages being sent out to your students, because they're going to get confused and they're going to get frustrated and potentially because of that. So I find that quite interesting about how that impacts your role as a tutor. So is everyone happy with the values, the behaviours and attitudes? Yeah, Steve?
Yep.
And I think because of the organisation you work for as well will massively impact your own values, your behaviour and your attitudes. But again, we have to look at it from what are the benefits of the learners, and we have to portray that. What about your boundaries?
Again, that's when it could be people come to you advice that you're not qualified or knowledgeable enough to give advice on. Do you blag it and give them that advice and therefore giving them wrong information, or do you signpost them in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give examples where you've had to do that, Paul?
Yeah, I've been teaching security for a while, but I've had people come to me with marriage advice, legal advice, all sorts, and I've had to say to them, look, I'm not qualified, or I'm not knowledgeable enough to give you that information. You need to go and speak to a solicitor or seek advice, or somebody that can give you that information or can give you that. And I think teaching security in London is very multicultural, and some cultures look at you see you as the trainer and see you as the be all and end all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And somebody's done everything when you don't.
In fairness, in some organisations, you are the only contact that will have with that organisation. So actually, that's even more important. Steve, your role is very unique in comparison to everyone else's.
Yeah.
What are the boundaries, I suppose, within your role?
I think the biggest one for me is when we're delivering topic areas and you're having learners having difficulties within certain aspects that go on their roles which aren't related to the course that's going on, when dealing with staff on like open courses where they're bashing the companies they work for about the bad experience they've got and reflecting badly on, and without them necessarily knowing of other learners or family members within that care organisation. That's not where I need to. So it's obviously trying to control those conversations that go on, and it's when people try and take topics off from what we're delivering on into other areas. Well, actually, that's not quite the topic we're covering today. That's a different area. So slightly different from personal tutoring, because obviously I don't really do any real personal tutoring, but from delivering courses, they're sort of things that we go on through. And when people ask questions about things, for example, with medications, people asking, what are the side effects? What should we do with this medication? What's this for? And it's saying, actually, I'm not a pharmacist, so I can't answer some of the questions that would go on. So things like that will often crop up in terms of where we go, and through things like that. And obviously things like when you're teaching first aid, up to things like EFAW and stuff, when people then want to talk about using things like bagging and things like that, which obviously start moving towards things your ILS is actually trying to bring people back. Obviously, I've got skill base in it through my work as a therapist. The work that I do, I've obviously done ILS training, but it's not what we need to cover on this particular course, and making people aware of things like that. But it's more difficult for me from the personal tutoring because I see my learners as and when they turn up. It's not like I take somebody through a whole course like everybody else do. So the closest I probably do to personal tutoring would be dealing with my martial arts students when they're having personal issues, from that point of view.
No, absolutely. What about you, Stephanie? What are your boundaries within your role?
I think a huge one for me, I remember mentioning this in an assignment we've done, is basically like contact with your learners, so things like Facebook, social medias. And I remember seeing a quote on Gravels, by Anne Gravels, and it was basically giving learners like your personal telephone number can be seen as encouraging informal contact, which, you know, can be unethical, unprofessional. And you've just got to be really careful with that kind of limitations and boundaries to let your learners know that, you know, if they need you, you've got a work email or you're only contactable certain times and days. But things like your social media, I know it's different for every industry. You know, some people do advertise on Facebook, things like that, which is, you know, if that's what their company and policies are happy with. But there's some organisations I work with where it's absolutely prohibited. You do not give your personal emails, your personal phone numbers, your social medias, nothing like that. It's strictly professional in the context of, look, I'm available between 9 and 5. This is my work email. And if you contact me outside those hours, I'll get back to you the next working day. Because I think it just causes so many problems. Sometimes you've got to have that professional relationship with them. And as much as you can be friendly, but you're not their friend, as blunt as that sounds, but that's the professional capacity and what a tutoring role is, I suppose.
Yeah, so I suppose we're going to just chuck a spanner in the works here. I use social media for my business. I contact, in fairness, Steve, Aaron, and Paul. Paul, yeah. Not so much because we communicate via email, but yeah, the rest of you, social media, Facebook's generally the first point of contact, isn't it?
Yeah. Just depends, doesn't it?
It does. It depends on your company's policy, I suppose.
Steph is currently forcing her attitudes and beliefs off us, Chief. I feel oppressed about Steph's social media paranoia.
I've just got issues with Facebook.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of it, but that is your behaviour, your belief, and your attitude. You are now oppressing us. You are forcing that.
Oh my goodness. I just think as well it's like it's personal experience, because I had, like, when me and Aaron used to work, I mean, even you must admit, when we used to work together years ago, Aaron, this company that we work for, it was very much like people would add you and they would somehow get your personal phone number and things, and then it's the messages and the things that they used to send you, they just weren't professional, and then it was that awkward behaviour of having to go on the next day and say, can I have a quick chat? You can't be sending messages like that on my personal accounts and things. And so it's just, Aaron's completely right. It is totally my attitude, my belief. That's based on my negative past experiences. So now I wouldn't give learners anything like that. And if they did try and add me on Facebook, it would just be an instant block. Yeah.
I think it's knowing your audience as well. Because in fairness, yeah, social media is easier for me for, contacting all of you and actually tagging you in jobs and stuff like that, opportunities that come up.
Yeah,
In fairness, you're all tagging me in, a post last night, which actually really, really beneficial for me. But it's just being aware, I suppose, of the benefits and limitations. I think when I was dealing with funded trainings, like, no, honestly, I wouldn't give out these details. And in fairness, the stuff you got on social media is, I don't really have personal stuff on there in it. It's all business related, and it's just managing those expectations as well. And it's quite hard. So I've got one learner who will send, at 10 o'clock in the evening, like 40 messages unanswered. And unfortunately, I have to sort of, in a way, ignore that, because actually it's kind of it's overstepping the line. Whereas you don't mind, and I don't message any of you, at 11 o'clock at night. So it's inappropriate. It's just knowing those sort of boundaries. Aaron, I did at 5 o'clock the other morning, because he was awake and sent me a message, and I was there and I responded anyway because I was awake as well. And it's just setting those expectations. What is required in your organisation as well? Because again, what I would expect from me, my conduct will be differently from, say, one of my tutors, because I don't want you having that, having those calls in the middle of the night or anything like that. Because actually, you have personal lives to deal with as well, and you have to set your own expectations. And with your learners, setting expectations of your learners, what's acceptable and what's not, when it comes to potentially social media as well. You live in the same area as Aaron, I can imagine as well, because you're working on the doors.
Stephanie's much posher than me, mate. She doesn't live where I live. No,
yeah.
Stephanie's a big postcode away.
I live in Durham.
Yeah, I live in Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
I'm from Hartlepool, though, are we? Like, I'm from Hartlepool.
It can be an awkward one. Again, I'm going to a wedding next year. My best friend, who's actually marrying his teacher from college, because they developed a relationship outside of, whether that's right or wrong, it's not my opinion. But it's those boundaries, and we have to be careful of that. Again, you think about especially when you got under 18, so safeguarding aspect of, and this is a really interesting one I had one person who did the AT. He's a driving instructor, and I told him he had to sort of adapt a lot of his answers, because he talked about, once they finish the lesson, he'll drive that person home. It's like, that is unacceptable in any industry other than a driving instructor, because that's what you do. So otherwise, you're not going to leave that person, 30 miles from their home, because it's, it's not safe for them, especially in Middlesbrough, of all places. But we just have to set those expectations as well. So, what are boundaries within your teaching role? So, put your teaching hat on now. What is your boundaries within teaching?
So,
make sure you're teaching what is within the subject, not going outside the scope of training or the learning criteria of outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that I think sometimes as subject experts, you can kind of be caught in your own, right, I might show off my expertise by talking about this and that, when, it's going to be too advanced. So think about first aid. How many variations are there of Dr. ABC?
You, Dr. ABCDE, Dr. CABCD.
Yeah, so potentially you can be misinforming your learners just based on what course they're sat on as well. Yeah, it's a really good example there, Paul. What else?
Probably what Aaron accused me of earlier. So don't be pushing your values, your thoughts, your beliefs onto your learners. Obviously, that everybody's going to have their own individuality, and I think it's important that we nurture that. And even if we are, dead against X, Y, and Z, we can't we can't, tell them that really. It's all about obviously delivering what we need to, and then obviously, supporting them with what their opinions and what they want to do.
Yeah, perfect. And Steve, what about boundary within your teaching practice?
I think it's not going beyond the level of stuff that's needed within the course that we're delivering, not moving on to topic areas which aren't necessarily related to the course. Because obviously, I deliver so many different topic areas, and at times you get questions that sort of move off the topic of subject delivering into another area. So quite often, for example, manual handling, you'll go any challenge with your residents, and you'll start moving stuff that's more moving towards challenge of behaviour sort of thing. It's like trying to say, right, we're not here to focus that, we're focused from how we move people safely. Actually, that's a different course you need to focus on. Or, for example, I've gone into homes before. I remember a couple of years ago, one home, I got sent in to teach challenging behaviour because a resident strangled a member of staff. Now, my mindset was, that's not appropriate, the training I'm giving. I need to be giving you breakaway training. But the company wanted something training completely different.
Yeah, so you're limited to obviously the scope of what you've been set out to teach as well. Because again, there's a lot of experience in your teaching practice where you were just set to deliver a core subject. You don't have that support. You can't give them that extra needs they need because again, it's not there. You can't give them the extra support for joining instructions. What do we do next? And thinking about as well, SIA tutors. Applying for badges, is this within your remit as a teacher? Going to help people apply for the badge, or is that the tutor's role? What is set up within your organisations to do so? And how about tutoring? What are your boundaries?
With facts and figures, not half truths, assumptions, and maybes.
Yeah. Now, maybe as a tutor, it's not my role to be explaining a course topic because, the teacher is the expert in that. So we could be giving them incorrect information. Most of the time, obviously, you are a tutor and a teacher at the same time, but there will be some times when you're not. What else?
Making plans and sticking to them, like SMART goals.
Yeah.
Reviewing with your client, regularly to make sure that what you're doing is actually having the benefit it was intended for. Because I suppose, if anything, you've kind of got a service level agreement, haven't you? You've got a client and you're providing a service. So reviewing it with the client, that the goals that were initially inducted into the decision are being met, not just powering on because you've got to get from A to Z, but actually breaking that down and making sure that we meet the smaller goals before we finish.
So one issue that's come up last week actually is one of my clients' as learners, they're asking me to give them certificates when actually it's outside of my SLA to do so. It's down on the client to issue that because they've got a special thing planned for everyone, but they haven't been as, I suppose, forthcoming with the information to the learners need, and because of that, they're coming to me asking for, can I have this and that? So my hands are tied. I can't really give that information because the client is also part of it as well. So that we have to honour their expectations as well as managing the learner's expectations at the same time. So again, it does blur boundaries somewhat as well. Stephanie, what about you for tutoring? Any other boundaries you can think of?
Not really. Maybe just ensuring the flexibility approach. I suppose maybe that little bit more of a flexibility aspect in tutoring. So maybe just jumping on what Aaron said, just ensuring that the agreement you've got with your client suits the flexibility needs of your learners.
Absolutely, yeah, valid ones as well. So you've got and how would you establish those? And you're absolutely right here now. How do you establish those boundaries?
Ground rules.
Yeah, ground rules. What else?
Joining instructions.
Yeah, absolutely. Joining instructions if you are responsible, I suppose. So obviously, Steve, you don't have any of this information to give. Anything else we can think of? What about your ILPs now?
Yeah, looking through them and deciding if anything needs to be put in place, to put boundaries in place. You might be dealing with someone who's already vulnerable. Might be dealing with learners who've got safeguarding concerns and safeguarding issues, and the ILPs highlight that. So we need to put specific individual boundaries in place.
Yeah, absolutely. So here is a sample tutoring agreement, and again, you should, I suppose, have your own, especially those who've got their own organisations, have your own ILPs, have your own contracts in place. Contact information. Again, whose responsibility is it for updating learners' contact information? Normally, it probably fall upon administration staff, or it could be the tutor. What are the preferred methods of contacts and times? Generally speaking, the benefits of email and social media, that sort of things, that you can leave a message and they can respond at a time that suits them. But if I was going to say, for example, I was going to call Steve, I know Steve works pretty much every day. Call him in the morning or in the afternoon. It's probably not going to be appropriate for him as well. So it's actually establishing when these methods of, or these times are going to be suitable. What about your meeting schedules? How often do you meet with your learners? Now, for me, on the
tailored, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, if they've got, it could be different for every learner, and also obviously a lot of work. But I've had cohorts before where they're all mixed abilities, so we might say, right, we'll do a review so far through the course. But if I feel some are maybe struggling more than others, then I'll book more reviews or more meetings based on their needs. So it just depends what the learner's needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if I use you guys as a comparison, whereas I see you pretty much every month and message most of you on a probably a weekly or bi-weekly basis, I don't really need to chase up you for any sort of information. Whereas other learners who I don't hear from for a couple months are, we need, and I'm constantly on them, can we book a catch up, because I don't know where you are, I haven't heard from you, and actually there could be something going on which we need to address, and depending on that situation, we might need to adapt that meeting schedule as well. What about your objectives? What are the objectives of the agreement, I suppose, or of the learning plan? There will be potentially some aspects where you need to meet more frequently, maybe, or you might need to adapt objectives based on learners' progress of a particular course, or maybe they've just changed their mind on what they want to do in life, because especially longer courses, people change their mind and want to do other things. Again, you've got progress check dates. How often do you check progress? Steve, this is not really going to apply to you, is it?
It doesn't. I obviously don't have these things. I don't have to put these things in for me. So for me, it's a bit more of a, I can see the importance behind them all, but it's not stuff I really get involved in at the moment.
Yeah.
I think if I was more delivering like a train-the-trainer program, sort of that type of thing for somebody, where I'm taking them from a start to an end process, then I would probably have more of this sort of thing involved, where it takes place over a number of weeks and stuff. But when it's generally, I see people for a day, 2, maybe 3 days max, which is very, very rare. Normally it's one day, next day, done. It doesn't really fit in for me.
No, absolutely. Paul, how often do you check in with your learners?
At the most, it'd be every 4 weeks. If I'm doing something like a level 4 education training, I'll be checking in with them at least every 4 weeks.
Yeah. Stephanie, what about yourself?
Again, it's more, we kind of base ours on the learners, so I suppose it depends. If we're just doing short courses, then it's not really, we don't really need it. But obviously, if it's a longer drawn out course, we always try to say maybe every month, for example. But like I said earlier, it's more based on the individual learners. So again, if I can see maybe one needs a little bit more support, I might say, right, should we just bring it every 2 weeks or every month? Or again, I think it just all depends on your learners and the length of your qualification.
Absolutely. One thing I've sort of done, and you've probably noticed of this, is that you sort of get random emails just checking on your progress. And this is more of a reminder for you to, check where you are, and also to make contact if you haven't spoken with us in a longer time. Because sometimes people you just can't get hold of them regardless. And we've had it where one learner who was supposed to join you on the same sort of day back in September on the same course, that person has paid for a course and she's just uncontactable, like phone calls, emails, messages, all sorts. Everything's like just unresponsive. It's really strange. There's nothing I can do to get hold of that person. And that person once, texted me out the blue, said, "I'm really sorry because they're dealing with a lot of personal issues." And it's like, yeah, that's completely understandable. Let's can we arrange a time? And literally just no response from that after that. It's just really strange. But there's only so much you can do as well. And lastly, when does this agreement end? Typically, it's going to be the end of the studies, or it could be if you're providing that employment support afterwards, it might be slightly after that as well. So you have to set the requirements for that. More often than not, it's going to be the duration of your studies will be the designated termination date. When do you think tutoring is not effective? So, Steve, you said tutoring wasn't effective for you. Why?
Are you talking about in terms of the role I do now, or from my experiences?
Maybe have a look. Actually, I want you all to think about it from your own experiences.
From my experience, obviously, would go back to when I was at university, where tutors said they would do stuff, but they didn't do things. I didn't get the things that I needed. They weren't reviewing what was going on in my work, putting the right provisions in place to make sure that I was effective. In a way, they were discriminating against me because they weren't taking on board the personal plans that had been put in place for me. They weren't reviewing to make sure it was working. They weren't then going above to people. They said they were going to speak to you about things that were going on and put things in place. They never happened.
Yeah.
But as they made themselves available, it was like, yeah, we'll be there. And then nothing happened off the back of it. Nothing's done. This isn't working right. This is where we need to point you to. This is what we need to do. There was none of that. And then when you got tutors that come out and visit you on placements, you would get told one thing by educators, a different thing by tutors that would come out and tell you. So there was a lack of consistency, which caused trust issues that were going on between placements and lecturers and between staff as well. You're raising issues. You were then providing tape recordings of stuff, and you were just been told what you were recording was okay. And if I played you back a load of recordings that I've got, you'd be shocked how anyone would say that was not discriminatory in terms of things that have gone on. It's just quite surprising. So from my point of view, it isn't necessarily going to be effective. It can be a whole load of broken promises.
No, absolutely. It's that within that agreement, are you fulfilling what is within that agreement as well? And that's the worst thing, I think, I remember being back at school is, I need the support, and they don't provide it. You're thinking, why bother then? If you can't, you're the person who's supposed to be dealing with it. If you can't be asked, how am I supposed to? And you just sort of lose yourself, I suppose, within that system. Aaron, what about yourself? When would tutoring not be effective?
When questions are not answered in a timely manner.
Yeah.
When someone's got some concerns and they put it to the person, and instead of the person taking, some time to look over it and get back to them, they leave it like 7 days, 14 days, and then actually it's ineffective communication, which is quite negative. Yeah.
So this is quite an interesting thing. So within the fire service, I only go to work, I suppose, once a fortnight, and half the time I don't even get access to my emails, something like that. So generally speaking, I don't get the support I need in my role, because it's not really set up for the fire service as well as it is for the day crew. But again, think about your service agreements. When are you like once a week maybe? Again, it's a lot more difficult. So again, we have to look at the scheduling aspect of tutoring, the organisational, the tutors. Does this all match up as well? What about you, Paul? Any ways that tutoring is not effective?
Yeah, I'll give one example. It could be when the tutor's maybe not feeling 100% or not feeling well. For example, I went in one day with the worst migraine ever, and my tutoring was probably, looking back on it, absolutely shocking. But my migraine was there. I felt physically sick. I just felt really bad. There was no one else to cover me. Didn't want to let the learners down. Still went in. And yeah, the tutoring probably wasn't at its best.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, this is the reason why this lesson's rescheduled, because I was really ill on that Sunday. And, you know, I don't think I could have explained the topics or given you that sort of, you know, support that you needed on that day. So it just wasn't in the right frame of mind. And that's going to happen as well. And there's no right or wrong way, because actually you do have to decide, you know, am I going to turn up so the learners are not disappointed, or do I make that decision and just and teach just on the basis that I know I'm ill and I'm going to be limited my capacity? And again, it's going to depend on what other support you may have as well. Maybe you've got another teacher there who could step in. That might be another alternative. But the reality of it, you have to be flexible to deal with that situation as well. And Stephanie, what about yourself?
I think, well, it was a while ago, my daughter, she's just done some of her exams, and we tried to get her a maths tutor. And they just weren't, there was just no rapport there. They just weren't, you know, lovely guy, lovely, but he just wasn't a right fit for our Lil. And you could tell it just wasn't working out. So I think it can be quite difficult when, you know, at least when you're teaching or you're in a class, you know, if there's a few learners that you might not have built a relationship with, you've got others you can kind of engage with until the others want to jump in. But when if it is just one-to-one tutoring, if you don't get on with that person or you haven't got that same likes and interests, it can be difficult to kind of build that professional relationship where they're confident to approach you for support, or, you know, you can have a bit of a good, you know, a carry on and, you know, have that comfortable relationship. So I think when that doesn't work, then you're just not going to get much engagement or progress, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. You've got to have your personality's got a match as well, because there are certain people that just don't get on, regardless of who they are. There's like personality styles, and we talk about coaching and mentoring as well, is that you'll have personality styles, they have to align, otherwise there's going to be pure conflict within that relationship. And talking to someone the other day where they are, you know, a stickler for, you know, learners turning up on time, and to some extent I agree with that, because it's time wasted for you. But if that person is going to be one of those people that are always, you know, they're slightly late and we can't make the necessary adjustments, and then it's not gonna work, because again, there's going to be that conflict which we will need to deal with. Scheduling and time maybe could be another one, because maybe you don't have the right resources to support that person as well. You can be limited by your organization's sort of role expectations and what you can do. So you might not be able to give them the support that learner actually needs. And you see this a lot of time. Training providers will take on learners knowing full well they cannot provide the necessary support for that learner. And again, it's that as potentially in your role, you are given that learner, but there's nothing you can do about it. There's going to be limitations, but potentially in your role, you are limited by the scope of your role within that organization as well. So there are other things you can consider. And again, within your organization, is you might not have that access, that pool of support mechanisms which you absolutely need. You think about working in a large university like, I don't know, Cambridge, you've got access to every single department or specialist experts that you need. Whereas you work in a smaller training provider, you won't have that. So you have to be a bit more resourceful. So here are just examples here of limitations when it comes to tutoring. We don't really need to go through these because we kind of understand these. Does anyone want to go through any of them, or are you all happy?
I'm happy.
Yeah. Cool. So question 3 is about you explaining the boundaries and limitations of your role. And it would be really good as well. Oh, Aaron's back. Sorry, I didn't realize you disappeared. So question 3, you need to give an explanation of the boundaries and limitations within that personal tutoring role, why it's important for you to establish those boundaries, and to give an explanation of those limitations. And again, it might be worth exploring, you know, how your own boundaries and limitations are affected by these and give reasons for them. Any questions, or are you happy with that?
Happy with that.
Happy?
Yeah. Cool. What I'll do is that we'll stop for a quick cup of tea if everyone's happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How long do you want? 10 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. All right. I'll see you back in 20 past.
Yeah, bye.
All right. See you in a bit. Bye.
At number 2, and then we're going to stop, and then we're going to fill it up and sew it up. So you do have the 2 pieces, both of the flowers on each side, and go ahead and make sure they are lined up. I'm going to turn it on again, and slowly.
Turn that down, please, son. Oh, it's okay. I'll put my earphones back in. Tight.
This totally moves it like the back fabric, but that's okay. Let's see here. Cool. I think it's taking the thread of our fabric and it's stitching it together. I don't know, without any thread, that's pretty cool. So let's bring in our stuffing. So this is the part we get to stuff. So we did not sew from 1 to 2 right here. So we've got enough room to stuff it and just put that in there. Make sure you stuff it in all of the corners here. Okay, that's good. Don't overstuff it. And now let's go ahead and finish it off. So I'm just going to stitch this little opening right here. Go ahead and turn it on. And again, we're going to put it in. Here we go. Okay, I'm just going to move it back too, just to make sure it's really on there. So here is our flower pillow that we just created. Now what you can do is you can cut the excess fabric all the way around. We are all done with our flower. Here you go, Isabella. Now you know how to sew a flower pillow. See, from here though, I'm going to do this pen pouch. This has 2 pieces of fabric. We're going to land right on top of each other. And as you all can see, we've got the dotted lines. That's where we're going to start sewing. Now, this requires no stuffing. Okay, let's go ahead and turn it on and start sewing. Go ahead and push the fabric. Turn it off. So far, so good. Look, it's a little pouch. Okay, now we have to stitch right in the middle right here. So since the needles are down, you can thread your fabric and start sewing.
TV on.
All right, now we can stop it. And the needles go back up. I'm going to bring out some markers and see if they'll fit in our new pouch. Okay, how cool is this? I'm going to go, yeah, this pouch. I'm so excited. All right, cool fans, we have
About, I don't know, about 1 o'clock. I'll have to go off for just about 10 minutes, Matt.
1 o'clock.
About 1, yeah. My brother's, he's in a bodybuilding show, so I've told my sister just to go live when it's the final.
Okay, no worries. Lovely. Is he the one you posted today?
No, yeah. So he won the NABA final, and then he won Mr. North of England. So he's in the PCA finals this week.
Right.
If he gets top 3 in that, he'll be representing the UK in Europe for bodybuilding. So it's a good step.
Oh, that's good. to have the discipline to do that, you know, it takes a lot of
He's diabetic as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Both my brothers are diabetic. One of them doesn't look after himself. My other brother's a strong man. He doesn't look after himself. He just lifts heavy things. And then obviously Ethan's a professional bodybuilder. But yeah, my other brother Gavin, he's always ended up in diabetic comas. Just doesn't look after himself at all. So weird, you know. Too. Both got it from taking steroids. Yeah, both was unfortunately triggered by not even steroid abuse. They both took a similar steroid at around the same age, and it didn't. I mean, you'd have thought the younger one would have learned from the older one that, you know, that was quite negative, and he didn't.
Yeah.
So I'll just stay fat and unfit, no diabetes.
You do say, you know, no exercise, you know, never hurt anyone, but why take a risk? Yeah. Okay, so ethical and professional codes of standards. So what are they? What are your professional codes of practice or codes of standards? I think in the SIA probably, you know, be a big part of it.
Yeah, hugely, aren't they? You know, the English assessments that are now in place.
Yeah.
Having to record everything. So we said, didn't we, the recordings were for the SIA, the written part are for off-qual, aren't they? So having two professional codes of practice really in one there.
Absolutely. Then potentially you've got SET as well, because there are expectations of professional tutors and that as well. There's other professional codes for tutoring. Not that you really need to be aware of too much great detail anyway. So here's some scenarios. So you've got a learner in your group who is very thin. She's called Jean, by the way, as you could expect. So she keeps going out of your lesson and you suspect anorexia nervosa might be the cause, and you have a tutorial with Jean in 15 minutes. What do you do? What do you talk to Jean about? Difficult conversation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you could go out there and say what you're doing for lunch, but that would really, and I don't mean that in a joking way either. I genuinely mean it is, could you approach that conversation? And if she says, oh, I don't really bother with lunch, how come? Any reason? You know, you could literally approach it from there. Because actually, we get this paranoia that sometimes we shouldn't approach things directly because we don't want to cause embarrassment. But asking a simple question that we ask to everybody else anyway, we only make it weird if it seems weird. And asking someone what you're doing for lunch is a completely normal thing to ask. Now, I wouldn't say in front of the lesson, right, guys, what's everyone doing for dinner? I would do it in more of a one-to-one, and then I would take the conversation wherever it naturally went from there.
Yeah, what, Stephanie?
We shouldn't assume, though. We should never assume. Like, I mean, I think that's one of the big factors as well. I mean, it's quite easy to assume. You know, so again, it's just about how you broach that subject, because just because you might suspect somebody has anorexia doesn't mean they actually do. You know, because I've had it before where I've had a student who, you know, he was a larger gentleman, if you like, and then the next time I seen him months and months later, he was very, very slim. And, you know, people were like, oh, do you think he was ill, or do you think he's developed some health condition? And like everybody had this assumption that there must be something wrong with him, when in fact it was just that he was on a diet, he was losing weight, and he was doing it for himself, and there was absolutely no medical or mental issue there. But I think, again, it goes, you know, people do have that assumption, don't they? Because we do have the interest of our learners, we do have that duty of care. But I think as well, you have to be very careful not to assume. But it's a funny one, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe they're doing a bodybuilding competition, you know, today, and they've been fasting for around. They fast for a couple of months before a show, don't they? To prep, they cut, water, everything, and potentially that's. So it's good that you are, you know, you're thinking about potential safeguarding issues, but you have to talk to that learner first, don't we, to actually, you know, try and identify, you know, what could be going on. Would you discuss it with other people?
Potentially, if I've got.
You have to break confidentiality if you think they're a risk, you know, to themselves. So there is that term that you will have to break confidentiality and discuss that with others if there is that safeguarding issue present. Yeah.
So what is when can we break confidentiality?
when
when
the
they risk
learners are
themselves.
when the learners at risk of acute or chronic illnesses or anything that's an immediate effect on their health.
Yeah.
Or others, or if they're a
can-
risk to others.
Paul?
Yeah, there's an example that I actually had. It wasn't me who come across it. It was actually the IT department, and it was in a college in London. One of the students was looking up how to commit suicide.
Yeah.
The IT department raised it. We went straight to safeguarding, pulled him out, and spoke to him. I let safeguarding take the lead because it was what their speciality in dealing with that. I was a bit out of my comfort zone, to be honest, but needed to be done.
Yeah, no, your boundaries there. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You will be, I suppose, when you have that conversation with your learner, you have to be made aware that this may need to be raised to safeguarding teams because of the potential risk here as well, and just making them aware that you can't confirm it's just going to be between you and me. As much as we want to, we have the learner's best interest and needs as well, but we have to make it clear that this information may be shared with your colleague team to help to give that support as well. But we can never assume. We can never assume. But we can talk to our learner, okay? And we should actually discuss this conversation and not try and avoid the topic. Good tutors will have that conversation with learners if they're welfarers, and but you're right. Even you see it from securities that people are even with genders because of the stereotyping and all that comes with that as well. So we have to be quite mindful as we have to have these conversations. Another scenario for you about Tony wants to say something really serious. Groundbreaking is worrying as long as you can keep it a secret. Tony says, I won't tell anyone else in the world because I know I can trust you. How do you approach the conversation?
You just need to let them know initially, exactly pretty much what you've just said. It depends what the nature of what they're going to tell you is. So obviously if it is a safeguarding issue or that person is in danger or they need help, and unfortunately you can't do that, but you must tell them that beforehand. You can't then say, yeah, no problem, I promise to keep the secret, and then they'll tell you. And then obviously that learner, as much as that we have to do that, that learner is then going to obviously feel very, let down or potentially betrayed just because you followed the rules, so to speak. So I think it's important that you must tell them that first. It depends what the nature is of what they're going to tell you. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, if you betray them as the only person they trust within that organisation, how is that going to impact them as well? So again, you have to be truthful to what you're going to do. Depending on that conversation, I most likely might have to tell someone else for the benefits of your own interest. Lovely. Jim looks really wants the work which has been given in a computing lesson. You look at the assignment brief and there's so much stuff on it. What do you do?
Try and break it down for him. Try and break it down into chunks and work with him and see how you can support him.
Is that your job or is that the teacher's role?
Teachers?
Yeah, it probably is the teachers.
Yeah, so potentially that if you break it down, maybe you could be given the incorrect information. So what should you do in that situation?
Referring back to the teacher.
Or maybe we have that conversation with the teacher to, find out what's going on there. So again, we just have to be careful that we don't give them the wrong advice as well. And that's sort of what the point is looking at. Yeah, it looks like, we should break it down for them, but the reality of it is we may not be experts. Again, I'm not going to say I'm an expert in health and social care. I know stuff, but I'm not going to be at the time when Stephanie is. So I'm trying to break it down because actually I'm not qualified enough to give that decision. And lastly, we've got who's got a TV in the background, so I can't really. Yeah.
It's my TV's in the background. Is that me?
I think it could be. Could you? There we go. So you pick up the phone in the office and hear, hello, this is Mr. Smith, the father of Cara Smith in your class. How is she getting on with her studies? What do you say?
bear with me a second, and then you need to go and check to make sure that there's nothing on the records to say that, you know, he might not be able to have any contact with her, or there's anything legal, any legal implications. And as well, I know it sounds strange because obviously some schools, obviously my children go to school now, just ring up and go, oh, hi, it's Steph so-and-so's mum, and they're quite happy to give me information. But obviously when certain ones I've worked in, sometimes they request that they have a password, obviously depending on ages. But say if they were doing a traineeship and they were under 18, we might request a password from the supposed guardian or parent and see that checks with our records that they are in fact who they say they are. Because it would be easy for anybody just to ring up and say, hi, I'm so-and-so's mum or dad, and get certain information, especially if there's that legal implication where maybe the parents are divorced or maybe there was some sort of abuse. And there's that legal implication that they can't have contact, and then you're breaking confidentiality and you're giving away information that you shouldn't be.
Yeah, because that's illegal to do that, isn't it? And unethical at the same time. What if she's over 18? Let's say Cara's over 18.
Then unless there's some form of learning difficulty, you can't really disclose that information, can you?
Yeah. Again, depends on what they're doing. 18, they're an adult. If any of your mums and dads rang me up and asked to see how you're getting on, in fairness, I wouldn't be able to give that information. I suppose that's the nature of what we do. But the reality of it is, yeah, you're right. Learning difficulties, SEND in particular, you might get that information, but we have to ascertain who it is to confirm that we are talking to the right person as well. Because there are things that potentially go on home when it comes to learner welfare, we do have to be mindful of as well, especially when you have, broken families, because there is always that power struggle, I suppose, in that family as well, that we just have to be very mindful of the personal circumstances that may be placed upon as well. I think I've accidentally just pushed on too far there. There we go. So why is it important to act professionally and ethically as well? So I don't know, I think I can't think, it might have been Steve who said this earlier, is, as much as we want to give help to our learners, what happens when we take away that support?
They start to struggle.
Yeah. So the reality of it is we can't do everything for our learners because we have to help them to develop as individuals as well. So once that support is taken away, are they going to sink or are they going to swim? So we have to be very careful. If we go back to learning theories, scaffolding, where you take away that support, you give them the knowledge. Once they're ready, you start to take away that support from them so they can actually start to develop on their own. And that's probably as important, that we prepare our learners for the next stage of life. So what happens when you can't pick up the phone to them anymore? They've now progressed and moved on to the next part of their careers. Then they have to start to be able to perform in the role. So, for example, teaching, you've all got a teaching job. At what point does that support, disappear? And you just have to be mindful of that as well. So by doing too much, you're kind of taking away that ability for them to stand on their own feet. And everyone's got children here. Thinking about if you give your child too much support, especially that's one thing I sort of have to think about. My boy goes to nursery and when he goes to school in September, so he's got to start doing things for himself. Otherwise, he's going to be left behind. So you can't do too much. And the fact that as much as we want to, we have to prepare others for the real world as well. Same sort of thing as well. If we're giving the wrong advice, are there other people who can give better advice? And there's always going to be someone potentially within your organizations who can be better placed to deal with certain aspects than what you are. And again, how do we remain professional within our roles as well? Okay. Just be aware of what your boundaries are and try and stick within those boundaries. Even if your learners are asking you for help, you have to be careful what you cannot do. What professional standards should you follow? Can you list 5? It could be any 5.
Having a professional attitude.
Yeah, your attitude.
Boundaries.
Your boundaries, yeah.
E&D.
Sorry, Steph, E&D.
E&D, yeah.
What about plagiarism?
Yeah, it's a big thing at the minute, isn't it? Plagiarism. It's really, really big at the moment, I think. I was having a conversation about this with Aaron the other day, that I've had lots and lots of students lately doing like management qualifications where I dare say nearly 90% of it is plagiarism, or they've kind of not understood the concept of plagiarism, referencing, where they've literally just answered a question with a paragraph from a textbook or an internet source and then just referenced it and said, that's my work. And then when I've gone back and said, that's a great reference, but could you put it in your own words? They're absolutely stumped what I mean. They think because they've just referenced that quote, that answers the question and that demonstrates knowledge. And then when you go back to them, and they're just in disbelief that I've dared ask them to put it in their own words.
I had one learner doing a course, and he literally cut and paste from the course specification in the indicative content, and you could actually see the different shade of colour from where he'd cut and pasted it. And when we said to him, we can't accept that, his response was, but it's the answer.
And yeah,
he just could not understand why we could not accept it. And he got really arsy about it as well. He was like, but it's the answer. I don't see why you can't take it.
Yeah, I had a situation on the IQA course of a learner who was talking about policies and procedures. So he decided to copy and paste Highfield's quality assurance policy. So yeah, I fully understand that. But can you summarize that? And he's like, no, I can't, because he had autism. He has a special form of autism, but he refused to have reasonable adjustments to account for that. And because of that refusal, to supply evidence so that he can be marked against different criteria, couldn't really help him, because actually he just plain right refuses to get that support. You need his permission to do so and that evidence. So therefore you cannot make those adjustments so again, it's a bit of a grey area. But when you talk about plagiarism as well, is if you work too closely with your learners to give them the answers, they'll actually be copying your work rather than their own. So you have to be careful as well that you're not just spoon-feeding them the answers, because the reality of it is they do need to be able to practice in the workplace as well. And I've seen it as well where I've had learners who have just copied and pasted the handbook that I've written myself. So again, it's like, you just talk about what I've done in my life, not about what you've done. So again, it's that you're not showing any understanding at all. Anything else you can think of? What about what about safeguarding?
Obviously, you just need to be very mindful of it. I think I don't think it just really doesn't matter what topic you're teaching, what your speciality is, how old your learners are. I just think we all need to be very, it needs to be at the front, like the front of the majority of things we do. Just because sometimes I think when you get that engrossed in your teaching and your delivery, it can be missed. And obviously that, you always get a diverse range of learners and you get different people, and then you get, communication barriers. So I think it's just something that we need to be mindful of. How, not maybe how easily it can be missed, but it can be to a context. So I just think we all need to be, really mindful of safeguarding a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, perfect. What about your own CPD?
It's a nightmare. To be honest, when you haven't updated your CPD record for a few months and then you have to fill it in, it's just treacherous, but it's important. But Aaron doesn't have any problem with that. Aaron's like, yeah, I'm going to let you take this one, Aaron, go on, because you're sweating, aren't you? With your 5 versions.
I don't know what your problem. No, I haven't got it now. I've put it all in one.
Yeah, Aaron had 3 separate versions or something. They're really good though.
Yeah. That's the thing, as professionals, we should maintain our subject knowledge in what we do. And it's great seeing that all of you have, you're actually showing passion by attending these courses, which, is improving your subject knowledge as well. And I see so many teachers who just got the AET who are like, I've got my teacher, that's it, I don't need any more. It's like, you shouldn't be a teacher because of that just plain wrong attitude right there as well. But the reality of it is that you have to enhance or keep your CPD up to date, so actually you can be teaching the latest things. Again, because things change with technology. Let's say, for example, I'm now learning how to use Zoom properly, and it's part of the process of using different technologies. And it's just being open to that. And I completely agree with Steph, where, you know, my CPD, I can't remember last time I updated mine. Probably the last time the AO has required me to update it, because I generally speak, I don't have a lot of time. But, you know, and I'd say, yeah, it's good practice to do it every single month. And I completely agree with that. But you have to look at are you able to do so? You understand? And you have to work out what's right, wrong for you. And I have said as well, this is what the awarding body wants within your DET, but do I do it? Probably not. You have your own sort of ways. As well, you have to be open to your learners about why you're expected to do stuff, whether or not you follow that or not. And sometimes just by explaining why you do or why you don't, can help to, I suppose, in some way, to give them more information to make up their own minds and how to approach the subjects as well. But yeah, so you've all, Steve, did you give me an example?
Yeah, we did give one earlier on, and also we got sidetracked with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's lots of different standards you should follow as professionals, and you might want to look at potentially any sort of memberships that you're part of. CQC, what are their sort of guidelines for working in the industry? The SIA, SETS might be another organisation. Again, there's, you know, teaching and first aid, resuscitation council. These will give you guidelines of potential professional standards. But again, it's the, you know, these are going to be the same standards realistically as a tutor or as a teacher will have as well. So yeah, are you happy with that question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So explain reasons of acting in accordance to ethical and professional standards, and give 5 examples of you meeting those standards as well. Lovely. And to finish off the learning outcome 1, question 5, and you should all be really good at this. And what is the importance of communication in life in general, not just tutoring in life? So obviously there's a spelling mistake in there. So why do tutors need to communicate with, or who do they need to communicate with, and why?
Well, we need to communicate with the learner so that they can develop.
Yeah.
We need to communicate with specialist departments. It could be, which we've gone over, safeguarding, for example. It could be with the instructor, the teacher, various people.
Yeah, so I've kind of kept it brief. So you got your learners, you got your parents if it's applicable, and your colleagues and supervisors. So potentially you could look at external employers or external organisations as well. You've all gone through stakeholders in Unit 4, I believe, anyway. Again, why do you need to communicate with these individuals?
So stepping stone relationships.
Why? Obviously, this is going to be an obvious one, but why do we have to communicate with our learners?
So they can develop and grow and learn.
Yeah.
So they can actually take the course. If we don't communicate with them, they can't also attend sessions they need to attend to, organise learning bits they need to organise for courses as well.
Yeah.
To remove any barriers. Obviously, if they've got any barriers to learning, how are you going to know what support they need or what barriers are preventing them from learning if you don't ask or speak or find out?
Yeah, absolutely. And you do see people on courses who they'll, you know, do really well, and obviously all of a sudden they'll just drop off, you know, disappear. Again, it's trying to find out what has caused that that change, I suppose, in their life to do that. Again, you could talk about employers. If you're working in again, your roles, all 4 of you would be working with employers. Again, how does that impact communication? Awarding bodies, maybe. So give examples of why and how you communicate with different stakeholders. So how do you communicate with people? What are your sort of main methods?
Could be email, telephone.
Email, yeah.
Verbal.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are the benefits and limitations of these different methods? You might include, you know, written communication as well. You know, they could be text messaging rather than email. WhatsApp is a new thing that we've started using. Again, it's got a better success rate of opening. Again, question, I think it's Unit 2 actually, when you talk about, it might be quite Unit 1 or 2, I can't remember now. You would have talked about communication. Again, you can actually use this as a good part of your answer. Yeah. What are benefits and limitations of these different communication methods? And how do they work with different stakeholders? Yeah, because each stakeholder is going to have a different sort of preference to communication. Social media, for example, as much as Steph hates it, actually, especially when it comes to 16-year-olds, they're all going to be on social media, but it's probably not going to be your roles. And analyze the importance of communication in that role, so benefits and limitations. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, happy?
Yep, more than happy with that.
More than happy is what I like to hear as well. So I'm just going to help myself to practice with my CPD. So hopefully you can all see right, I'm going to try and create a poll. Okay, bear with me 1 second. And it's all about exploring different technologies as well. Okay, so hopefully this will work. Right, because I'm going to be a little bit lazy with your choices. Hopefully you should now have has anyone got alert for a poll?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not on a scale of 1 to 10, it's on a scale of 1, 5, and 10. How confident are you answering this question? Five. So we're all 5s. We've got a 10. With those who have put 5, are you on towards 7 or are you down towards 3? Whereabouts are you?
Towards the higher end.
Cool. Lovely. So think about your subjects. Refer back to, I believe it's Unit 1 when you talk about communication. Use that as actually part of your initial part as well, because actually it can be used again. Right. Anyone want detail? Are we happy to move on?
Move on.
Yeah.
Move on. Okay. Yeah. Move on. Right. What factors affect learning approaches to learning? Learners' approaches to learning. Okay, so Unit 4 talks about socioeconomic, cultural factors within curriculums. Now, how do they affect learners? So let's start with the initial and diagnostic assessments. So what are they?
Initial.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on, Aaron.
No, it's okay.
I'll say initial analyses